Hi there, I'm Sam Sorbo, so we're going to get started here. I see Teresa. Teresa, you can unmute yourself if you'd like. I'm going to open this up to people to participate. So we're still waiting, obviously, for more people. But it's great that you're here. Oh, are you here? Okay. You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Same thing with Marta, if you'd like to unmute and chat. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about what we talked about last week. I want to go through, I have a couple of emails that I've gotten and information, more questions from people. So I want to go through that. One of the emails that I got, I'm very encouraged by a lot of the emails that I'm getting. So that's fun. So I won't do too many of them. But since you're here, my book came out. So I'm excited about that. I finally have it in my little hands. It arrived in the mail. It doesn't actually launch until January 26th. So, but I'm starting publicity for it today. I'll be on Newsmax later today talking about it, which is kind of fun. It's a little bit of a passion project for me because words matter. And I don't like the fact that people are just willy-nilly changing words. It's like they're changing the rules of the game right out from under us. And I don't like that. And so that's partly why I wrote the book. Somebody wrote me that they love the solution to the problem of teenagers who think they know everything. I love that. Logging that into my brain for the future. So she apparently has younger kids, but yeah, you gotta, raising kids takes some strategy, doing it right, I think, anyway. And so the solution to the kid who thinks that he knows everything is to challenge him with stuff that you know he doesn't know and have him start thinking about that. Kids need some humility, right? They do really well on the hubris side of things, but not so much on the humility. But it's natural, once you learn something, you think, oh, wow, I really know that. And it's not until you sort of get hit upside the head with a new development that you go, oh, so I didn't really know that when I thought I knew it. And of course, with age that comes, so that makes sense. Let's see. So that was one email. And then, by the way, I shared this video with my family and Facebook. Hope that was okay. Love your videos. Thank you very much for sharing the video. I need these to be shared. I need people to understand that it isn't a tremendous burden to home educate your children. In fact, it's a blessing and it's a gift and it's a privilege to be able to do that. And, we've been taught by our culture, we've been taught that it's so hard and you can't do it. And, all of the negative things, and that's simply not the case. So yes, if you want to share the videos, please do. Tell your friends. And I will go over at the end, but I want to point out that the next time I'm doing this will be Saturday. I'm just going to bop around a little bit on different days just to see how many people I can get interested. The Monday right after the holiday was great. Today, I'm going to have fewer people on, I think because everybody's sort of getting back to work and stuff. So I'm going to do a Saturday at the end of this week and see how that goes. Okay. This one, thank you. This really speaks to me. I grew up in a strict private school, which I loved, but the red ink thing really bothered me. I guess my teachers in the 70s were doing their best with what they knew, but they didn't know the negative impact of the looks I got due to the glaring red ink on my papers. Now, this was in answer to a video that I put out on the Accidental Homeschooler called Fear of Failure. And it's interesting because I really didn't talk about red ink that I remember. I'm not really averse to red ink, but when the teacher is handing back papers and she, holds it up and it's covered with red ink and then hands it to the student, everybody else sees all the corrections. And they might just be typos, or they could be, wow, you don't know how to spell and you can't form a complete sentence. Like, we don't know, right? So I think that that's what she's talking about, is this idea that because the video really talked about the idea that school kind of instills a fear of failure. Well, what is a fear of failure? It's a reluctance to even engage, because most things that you try, you fail at least the first time, but you should try and you should fail. And in fact, I think I even said this in the video, Michael Jordan, the secret to his success, he says, I failed a lot. Michael Jordan became one of the premier basketball players, if not the premier basketball player. So we need to instill in our kids. And in fact, somebody told me this story about somebody they were about how they grew up, that their dad would always like throw a party when they failed at something. Now that's an interesting way of looking at it, right? When your kid fails, throw a party. Yay, because you tried. And that's really the important thing. And you failed, which means you can try again, right? Just flip it on its head and do things differently. You are not obliged to do things the way you were raised or the way the system told you how to do them. You're not obliged to do that. So thank you for joining me. I want to see all the people who are here. But I do want to say that I'm just going through some of the responses that I got from last week, and then we're going to go into questions. So if you have questions, I'll ask you to unmute and then you'll ask the question. Okay. Sam, your information on homeschooling has encouraged me to spend daily time with my 14-year-old grandson. Online learning is difficult at best, and spending time encouraging him has produced excellent results. Not only better grades, but a clearer understanding of the material and the best benefit, a closer relationship. Thank you for your encouragement. So that's just awesome, because little boys need to be close to their grandparents as well as to their parents. And so that's just awesome that he wrote me this. And then he wrote this, which I thought was really also fantastic. I have found a secret in life is not only being happy, fulfilled, and economically successful, but more importantly, to have people who invest themselves in other people's happiness and success. And I have to agree. So maybe one of the things that we ought to be doing, well, okay, it's a red herring. I'm actually saying one of the things that we ought to be doing when we look at education in the United States is reevaluating our goals and our priorities for our children, and what we want for them, for their lives, where we want to see them. And it shouldn't be, well, my biggest goal for my child is to have the office on the 84th floor with the sweeping views of the city. That's not a goal for a child growing up. It's a nice perk if that's what makes them happy, but really our goal should be happiness. And really the true way to happiness is seeking truth, beauty, and goodness, which is not at all what our education system teaches. In fact, it teaches that truth, beauty, and goodness don't exist. There is no truth. There is no objective truth. Okay. Question, any insight on working full-time and homeschooling? Wow, I literally was writing this question right before you said it at the end of the video. So, because it's off of an accidental homeschool video, launching Homeschool Help. So she's asking if there's practical advice for working and having 2 kids under 6. And I'll be honest, you can't have it all. I know all the ads say that you can, but you can't. You will sacrifice something. And then the question is on you. What are you planning to sacrifice? For me, I worked pretty much full time while I was homeschooling the kids from home. I worked from home. So yeah, I took some business trips. Sometimes I took them with me, sometimes I didn't, but for the most part, I worked from home, at least when they were very young. But at the same time, I sacrificed, evenings, because I worked in the evenings so that I could be with my kids during the day. And I didn't watch a lot of movies, and I didn't watch a lot of television, and I didn't just play games on my phone. And, you've got 40 hours in a work week. You've got a lot more than that during the week. So you just determine when you're going to be working and when you're going to be with your kids. And then there's my kids were always welcome in my office, basically. I taught them how to be quiet. So if I needed to be on the phone, they knew what this meant. And, the shush sound, basically, the finger in front of the lips. They knew what that meant. And so they knew to be quiet. We grow up in a culture today that tells us basically children are little animals, beasties that can't be trained, but that's a lie. Your children can be trained. So you train them. Is it frustrating? Is it taxing? Is it challenging? Yeah, especially there are some kids who don't want to be trained. Yep, they exist, right? But the idea is you have to discipline your children. You need to learn how to do it. You better learn when they're young enough that, a stern voice would be enough to put them into line, because you don't want to be trying to discipline a 10-year-old if there's been no discipline up to that moment, because then that really gets challenging, and wait till they're a teenager. So if you're working from home and you have young kids, they need to be trained. And so do you. So maybe the hours that you work are not the morning time when the kids are feisty and getting up and going around. Maybe your hours of work are during nap time and after dinner. Hubby puts the kids to bed, for instance. I'm using stereotypes now, right? But that's daddy time. And that's your time to go to your office and get your work done, which is frankly how I did it. So that's my suggestion there. And just take this idea of, well, I can do it all. In a sense, just take it off the table, because you're going to sacrifice something. You just need to prioritize. And what are your priorities? It's that simple. Okay, last one here, and then we're going to go to the phones, so to speak. Quick question. Do you put together a homework schedule for your kids? If so, would you feel comfortable sharing it? This person used a weekly type of schedule for her kids when they were a bit younger, but apparently her kids are a little bit older, so she's given them more freedom. And she's found the strategy isn't working as well as she figured that it would. So she needs to make some adjustments. And I'm assuming she's asking me because she knows my kids are older now. Again, it all requires training. You need to understand the training that has to happen, and the training has to start at an early age. Now, are kids sort of reluctant to do school? Sure. A lot of times they are. So you need to be there, and you need to make sure that they're getting it done. And I call that checking in. So I check in with my kids. Typically I try to check in with them every morning. That doesn't always work. Sometimes I neglect that. Sometimes it's basically, it whittles down to like once a week. And that's because we do school and community once a week. And so, the day before we go to community, I'm like, hey, what did you have due for this week? I mean, sometimes it slips through the cracks. There's a lot going on. So if you find that your kids are slipping through more cracks, bigger cracks or whatever, then you need to close the gap, and you need to get the cracks, worked out, so that you're not playing catch up, the day before or the day that you're going into community, that kind of a thing. But there's always the threat. And so you've got the carrot and the stick. So you need to incentivize them to get their work done. But then if they don't get their work done, you just say, well, I guess you're doing summer school. I guess you're going to be going to school all throughout the summer. In fact, I'll be honest, I said that to my daughter this morning because she didn't do work over the break that would have allowed her to catch up because she fell behind before the break. And so I said, that's okay. You'll just be doing it over the summer break, because, it's going to be hard for you to catch up when we're back in class, basically. Although she'll probably catch up while we're back in class, because that's how she do. So yeah, that's what I would say. When the kids are younger, when they're 7th grade and younger, I used to make, for my kids, I used to make them checklists. I would put on a checklist, and it was a daily checklist, everything that they had to do for that day. and I would incentivize them. I used incentives when they were younger than 7th grade. The incentive was, if you can get all your work done by 1, you get a half hour to play on your games. That worked really well for my oldest child. It was not as successful for my younger boy because he wasn't that interested in games. And my daughter was just interested in going and drawing. So she was incentivized to get stuff done because she knew once she got stuff done, she could go draw. So that's the incentive. And then of course, if you do the checklist, it's easy to see what they're checking off. Now, you also have to check that they actually did the work. Sometimes kids are really wily and they don't do the work and they kind of tell a lie that they got the work done. And so if you have a child like that, then you need to be double checking that they actually got the work done. And by the way, if they lied, said that they got the work done, but didn't, then there have to be consequences. And it's up to the parent to figure out what are the consequences that are commensurate with that kind of behavior. I would say they had to be pretty harsh because lying is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So I would say, they had another large assignment that they had to work on, which would prevent them from doing anything fun. I remember we were invited to a premiere of, I think it was Frozen. It was a big premiere and we were invited, and that was very exciting for the kids. They were younger and they were very excited to go. Shane had not finished his homework and they were supposed to go with daddy because I wasn't going to the movies. And so I said, well, Shane, did you finish? I think it was just reading that he was supposed to do. I don't quite remember, but did you finish? And he was like, yeah. And I'm, really? And all of a sudden it sort of broke and he's like, no. And I said, well, if you didn't finish your work, then you can't go to the movies. And my husband went to bat for him and said, come on, Sam. And I said, I'm so sorry, but no. He had work that he had to do. He knew that he had to get it done and he didn't do it. There's a consequence for that. And yes, I'm the bad guy, but I'm the authority. Sometimes my husband, I'm not throwing him under the bus. Sometimes he's the bad guy. He really wanted to take the kids to the movies, and unfortunately he got punished also. And so that really made me the bad guy. And maybe that was too harsh. I don't know, but we never had that problem again. So it fixed it. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what other punishment I could have meted out. It seemed perfect for the occasion. You needed to get your work done. The movie is tonight. The work didn't get done. You can't finish it between now and the time that they leave for the movie. Therefore, you're not going to the movie, but you will stay home and get your work done. And boy, that whole night, he knew that he was missing something because he hadn't gotten his work done. So that's what I would suggest. Now, the next I wanted to mention, because I wrote a note here for myself, the next time I'm doing this is next Saturday, this coming Saturday. I'll do it at 1 p.m. Eastern. So you can plan for that. And I dropped one of my papers. Oh, right. I need to ask you all, if you wouldn't mind to, you can send me reviews. I would really appreciate that because I can use them on my website. So that would be great. And by the way, you can email me if you just go to my website, samsorbo.com. There's a link there to email me directly. And then I wanted to talk about me time. I haven't figured out yet how you guys can, do you know how to raise your hand on Zoom? Okay. If you raise your hand, just unmute and ask your question. Seth. But you don't look like a Seth. Seth Dennis. Can you unmute yourself? So I can't hear you. I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Fabulous.
I'm not Seth. It's my son's.
That's okay.
We
get it. We all get it.
So my question is, I have a program that I'm using, but they had it, scheduled out how much they wanted him to finish in that amount of time, but he's going slower than had thought. So my question is, do I push him to do more, or is it better to just let him work at his own speed?
Crack the whip, baby. No, I don't believe in cracking the whip. Here's the thing. It's no good if he gets to the end of the program, but doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
Because he's like memorized a bunch and regurgitated it on the paper and then doesn't know it at all.
Right.
You need to be the judge if he's actually learning it, but he's just learning it at a slower pace. Here's the thing. Just because, how old is he? Was that him in the background?
Yeah, he's 13.
13. Just because he's 13 doesn't mean he's ready for calculus or algebra or pre-algebra or whatever it is. It doesn't mean just because he's got an age after his name that his brain is ready to learn the thing that you're putting in front of him, just because most other brains learn it at that age.
Right.
And by the way, the program might not be the right program for him either. Maybe they're teaching it in a way that doesn't connect, that he doesn't connect to. So but I certainly wouldn't. So the quick answer is no, absolutely not. You don't necessarily push him. Now, I don't know what the program is requiring, if it's asking you to submit work and then you don't get whatever it is that you need from it. I'm not sure about all of that, but no, I wouldn't. I mean, that's the joy of homeschooling, is you don't make your child jump through the standardized hoops that we have in our education system, because that's not what learning is. That's what schooling is.
Yeah. And they didn't teach him cursive very well. So now he's having to really learn it now. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
But that's great.
So
and here's the thing, you can learn cursive when you're 26. It doesn't matter if that's something that is missing in the schooling that he's had so far, in the education, I should say, that he's had so far, then you pick up the pieces. Then what you're teaching him is that he can learn things that he sets his mind to learn. That's what education should be. It shouldn't be checking the boxes on things. Now, you think that cursive is an important thing to know. There are a lot of people in this world who don't.
Don't know how to, yeah.
I think that it's an important thing to know. So absolutely, you tell you put it in front of your child. This is what you're going to learn today. Is he learning that instead of learning something else? Yeah, that's how it works. But you've set the priority. Nope, cursive, that's the thing to do, Yeah.
And he's doing much better with homeschooling than he did at the other, public school. So, and he's learning in different ways. We're doing documentaries. He's doing a whole bunch of stuff. So I think he's doing much better. I don't know. I have to get it out of my head that he has to do it a certain way, I guess.
Yes. Stop jumping through their hoops. And it's and I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Danelle?
Yeah.
You may not jump through their hoops. You're raising an independent thinking young man. Is he learning things? Yes. Is he learning how to learn and how to teach himself? That's the big question, because what you teach him is almost going to be irrelevant in 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Because of the way technology is going. Look, it's his Zoom account that you're on. He's already past you.
Yeah.
And by documentaries, I mean your husband's movies.
By documentaries, you mean what?
Your husband's movies.
My husband's movies.
He has watched quite a few of them. He likes them.
Those are, my husband's documentaries. Excellent. Because those are very good, very informative.
He makes me stay up late at night to watch them. So I'm a little tired, but it's all good.
Yes. But hey, and that's a great way to learn. But now he's got to write a paper about them, because it's not enough to watch them. You'll forget. So write something down, do some more research. Has he seen Exodus, Patterns of Evidence, Exodus?
Nope. We watched one of the movies last night, We watched Forgiven last night.
Okay.
And some of those, we haven't gotten, I don't think, to the documentaries yet, but we watched some of the movies, and usually we talk about them after. So he kind of has good lessons, but and I'm so new to this. The pandemic kind of forced me into it. So I'm still, really learning what's going to work for us and what's not. And so I'm just trying to figure it out.
Well, writing is important, because when we put our thoughts on paper, we get them organized. And that's a very important skill. it goes from writing, then you go to speaking. You have to be able to write first before you can actually really speak coherently. And you need to be able to speak coherently in an organized manner in order to get your point across. And you have to be able to get your point across because you're discovering the truth and you need other people to understand the truth.
Right.
If you try to get into any kind of argument about what's happening today with COVID and stuff, any kind of discussion, you will come up against people who only regurgitate certain things that they have been told, because that's what they were taught to do in school, is to hear the teacher and regurgitate what the teacher says. But you're raising a young man to be an independent thinker who can debate. And so the writing is a very important component of that. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay, next. Anybody else want to raise their hand? I have a lot of blanks with not faces, and I don't know how people raise their hand because Danielle just actually raised her hand physically, so I saw her. All right. So one thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is I need me time. And in fact, I was talking with somebody the other day about this because I'm trying to convince her to home educate because her kids are going to school. They're very young and they're wearing masks all day and they've got plexiglass up. And I honestly don't know what we're doing. And by the way, the scientists don't know what we're doing to the children by forcing this on them. It used to be that the argument against homeschool, the first number one argument was, I don't know how, which is really sad because if you don't know how, and you're saying, I don't know how, that's really code for, I don't want to learn. It's not important enough for me to want to learn. That's what it's code for, right? I don't know how. It also is the idea that if you don't know how, you're just throwing your hands up and you can't learn. So it's one or the other or both. I can't and I don't want to. So that was the number one sort of objection. The number two objection, sadly, was always, what about socialization? For some reason, we believe children need to be around other children. And they do to a certain degree, but certainly not 8 hours a day. Because what happens is the teacher at the head of the classroom has been given the authority by the parent. So the parent has surrendered their authority in the eyes of the child purposely. Listen, little boy, you're going to go to class now and the teacher's going to teach you. That's where you will learn things. Meaning that they're being supplanted in the eyes of the child. So the teacher then changes year after year. Certainly during elementary school, the teacher changes year after year. In fact, my son was enrolled in an elementary school where they had two teachers who were co-teaching. One teacher would teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other would teach Tuesday, Thursday. Can you imagine the confusion in the brain of the child that he's dealing with a different person every day? Of course, this didn't even occur to me at the time, but that was the year that I discovered I needed to homeschool because that was such a failure year for him in his experiences in the classroom, and me also, frankly. I just went, wow, anything is better than this. Then as the child gets older, they swap the teacher out every hour on the bell. They just swap out the authority figure. So the child gets accustomed to an authority figure, but any authority figure, some maybe he likes, some maybe he doesn't. We don't, who really knows kind of thing. And the parents are still saying, hey, you need to listen to whatever the authority figure that institution gives you. So eventually the child, where does he look for any kind of meaningful input in his life? He looks to his peers. And I used to joke, you think a kid's going to learn manners from other sixth graders? But it goes deeper than that. And so they look for peer approval. We're actually, we are engendering in our children this need for peer approval because the authority figures are just swapped out just willy-nilly. And so, and then we say, why do they succumb to peer pressure? If everybody jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Yeah, probably. I mean, that's what I see going on in our culture today, frankly. We're all jumping off a bridge. We're destroying the greatest economy in the world and the greatest nation in the world because of fear of something that frankly is quite controversial. So back to the kids. So the secondary argument was always, well, what about socialization? And I disagree that socializing a child for 8 hours a day away from his parents in a group of his peers can really be beneficial overall. Certainly in certain respects, maybe. Some kids really thrive on the social aspects. Some don't. For some, it might be the worst place in the world for them. I know for my daughter, who's an extreme introvert, the last thing that would be good for her is for her to go to school every day. It would kill her. I mean, it would just stifle her because she gets exhausted by people. And me, I'm one of the people who exhausts her. I'm kidding. But she does. She likes doing her artwork. She likes solitary, being alone, quietly doing her artwork. And if you look at her Instagram, you'll know why. She works very, very hard on it. So my point is, just because the way we grew up seemed to be, well, I turned out okay, so it must be good, that's the wrong attitude. There's a better approach, which is homeschooling. And for us to climb out of this paradigm where we think that because we went to school and it worked out okay, that must be the best way to go about things. We have to let that go. And then we have to let go the whole, my kid has to be just as good as the next kid. In fact, we really ought to let that go because your child is unique. And the school teaches him that he's not. The school teaches him that he's a cog in the wheels. The school teaches him that he's an accident of nature. That's, in fact, somebody asked me the other day, where's your proof that they actually teach that? And I said, they teach evolution and Darwinianism. That Darwin's theory of evolution is the truth. That's what they teach. They teach that the theory of evolution is the only theory that makes any sense, and therefore it must be true. That means that life on Earth is completely, purely accidental. And the fact that we've survived this many billions of years, well, whatever, hundreds of millions of years, or however old they think human beings, Homo sapiens are, right? They still haven't found the missing link. Darwin himself in his book wrote, hey, without the missing link, all of this is poppycock, because Darwin, frankly, was a Christian believer. And he didn't even believe his own book, but he came out with his book because someone else was going to come out with the same research, and he needed to beat them to the punch, even though he didn't think that it was fully cooked. Sadly, that's what we're left with now. So we have an entire education system teaching what basically boils down to be a lie, because it has not been proven, but they teach that as the truth, as opposed to anything else. And that's the way that kids are growing up now, believing that evolution is true. And by the way, it's a specific kind of evolution. I'm not saying that things don't evolve over time, but if you do any research, and in fact, Danielle, please show your son Seth the documentary on the Cambrian shelf. I was talking to my kids about this yesterday, strangely. They don't even remember the documentary, which is why I said he needs to write a paper about it after he watches it, okay? Because they don't remember it, which is sad. But the fact is that you can only learn so much at a time. And they knew it when they did learn it, they knew it, and now they've forgotten it. And we forget things, and that's forgivable. But they didn't have to write a paper about it. The Cambrian shelf is the greatest explosion in the fossil record over a period of no time whatsoever. And there is physical evidence of it that scientists cannot explain, especially Darwinian evolutionists cannot explain it. So when you show them that, how dare they not be teaching that in the schools? By the way, there must be an alternative out there because this completely disproves Darwinian evolution as we know it today. But they hide that. Okay. So the kids grow up with this idea that, well, they're just an accident. And then we wonder why they become nihilistic and depressed. Then they also grow up with this idea that, hey, you're perfect the way you are. Don't body shame people. Don't discriminate. Okay, that goes a certain way. That goes a little ways. But when you tell a young person that they're perfect, when they know darn well that they're not, and you know that they're not, they know one of two things. Either you're lying, which, oh my gosh, you're the authority figure and you're lying to them. That'll send somebody into a tailspin. Who can they possibly trust? Or you're telling them the truth and they can't improve upon what they are, and they hate themselves because they're teenagers and they're filled with angst. And the world is a very bleak place once you convince somebody that they can't improve. You're perfect the way you are. Now I've gotten completely off track from that question. But the idea that we need our children to socialize for 8 hours a day. I mean, I got so fed up with people saying that to me back before COVID. Then after COVID, I sort of lost it on that. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about education. Now you're talking about socialization. That's a completely different thing. But the fact is that children who are home educated are typically better socialized than children who spend all of their learning hours, 8 hours a day, with other children the same age. They're not nearly as well socialized, and you'll see it when you talk to a homeschool kid. When you, as an adult, speak to a homeschool teenager, typically they have a completely different command of the English language. They know how to converse with adults. They don't mind conversing with adults. They actually enjoy conversing with adults. It's an actual conversation. I've had 3 people in the past 3 days tell me that about my daughter. Wow. How old are you? I'm 15. Wow. They say, wow, she's quite the conversant. And mind you, she's the introvert. So I'm just saying. Now, of course, you have the strays who would never have gotten along in the school system because they are social misfits. They're the ones who've given homeschoolers a little bit of a bad rap, because back in the day, you'd have to be crazy to homeschool your kid. The schools were doing, quote unquote, a fine job. But these days, there are more and more people who are home educating. So back to this idea of I need me time. That's sort of the third excuse that people come up with. I'm sorry. I don't have sympathy for that. Okay. I can empathize a little bit, but we started this whole session today talking about training your children. If you need me time, train your children how to give you me time. You're the parent. You can do that, but don't just say, I need to have some time for myself. Therefore, I'm going to enroll my child in a school that treats them the way that the COVID regulations are now forcing children to behave, that treats them that way. That's just a cop-out. And I understand that it's a frightening thing to take on the education of your child. It's a very frightening thing. I remember I was scared to death. I was literally shaking. I had an anxiety thing about the whole thing. But there are people who have gone before you, who know what they're doing. You can interview their children. You could interview my children. You know what? I should bring my kids on the next time I do this, to answer questions. You should interview children who have been homeschooled. And yeah, not all of them are like super duper, genius, whatever. But by and large, they end up smarter and more intelligent, not just smarter, book smart, but more intelligent, more able to carry on a conversation, more able to carry on thinking, right? Because in school, we teach children not to think. We teach them not to learn. That's what we're teaching them. We're teaching them to memorize and regurgitate for the test. We're teaching them to raise their hand to ask a question, which conditions them. And by the way, I think we're seeing a direct result of this right now, because nobody's questioning the authorities about the use of masks. In fact, I started a speech and debate club, 2 of them actually here, because we just moved here. And our debate topic for this week, I'm very excited, is the federal government should mandate cloth masks in public areas. Because I want the kids to go do some research, and I want to hear both sides of the issue, and I want to hear it debated. I know that I've pretty much made up my mind, but I'm open. Convince me that I'm wrong. I would love that, but we don't seek that anymore. Notice that you're not allowed to bring an alternate opinion on college campuses, because you'll be shouted down, you'll be banned, or you'll be forced to go into a free speech zone, which this is the free speech zone. The United States is a free speech zone. So don't give me your zones about freedom of speech. And then you have all these kids who are like, la, 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 I can't hear it. I need safe spaces. It's ridiculous. That's the mark of a schooled child, not an educated individual. An education reflects the ability to entertain a thought without losing your composure or your temper, something like that. So the idea that you need me time, I really want you to reconsider that, because you can get me time when you homeschool. In fact, you can get it better. I gave up. What did I give up when I stopped dropping my kids off at school? I didn't have to make breakfasts in a hurry in the morning. I didn't have to run around the house looking for people's shoes. I didn't have to yell at the kids to get in the car. I didn't have to drive to school. I didn't have to sit in the drop-off line. I didn't have to drive back home. I didn't have to bring lunches that kids forgot. I didn't have to do parent-teacher conferences. I didn't have to bake for the bake sale. I gave up going and sitting in the pickup lines, a half hour early waiting for the kids, getting out, speaking to the teachers, picking up my kid. I skipped a bunch of stuff. So, and that all became me time, because school for kids, for young kids, is maybe 3 hours a day. I realize I'm not reading the chats, and I'm so sorry, because I thought people were going to be raising their hands. 3 hours a day for younger kids, even less for younger. And then as of 7th grade, then they've got to go up to, 4, 5, 6 hours. You gradually give them more and more work to do. So thank you for the comments. Keep up the good work. You're multitasking. There is no such thing, David. Sorry. Nice try. I'm kidding. What sort of time frame daily do you look to aspire to daily? We break up ours a lot, but my younger children are 5 and 3, and she didn't homeschool her older, now adult 4 kids. So if you're asking about 5 and 3-year-olds, less than an hour a day. They should be outside exploring. They should be experiencing the world. You can put on maybe some documentaries for them. I've seen little documentaries for little kids. I remember we used to do zoo. Oh, there was a lemur zoo something. I can't remember his name. And he had different animals on, and they would cover different things for the kids that way. But in terms of like actually schooling them or trying to educate them, sure, flashcards for, 15-minute, they have like 15-minute time, attention spans. Don't torture them with, no, you have to sit here for this, and this. And then also you have to figure out what kind of learners they are. Maybe they learn by jumping up and down, and then you just get them to memorize things and repeat things. So they shouldn't be full day when they're that young. Sadly, most schools don't even have authority to let the kids run wild. No, not anymore, certainly. I don't have to deal with nonsense and ridiculous rules of the school. Yeah, that's why a lot of people are turning to homeschool right now. Okay. jumping up and down. My youngest does math, jumping up and down. I didn't have a kinesthetic learner like that, but I understand them. Sometimes it helps. I know that it helps me to regurgitate my thoughts against somebody. And I'm just telling them, I'm trying to figure this out because this, oh, I got it, right? Because just saying it out loud helps me figure things out, right? So there are lots of different ways that your kids learn. Please just try to step outside the school paradigm, get out of that box, and it'll go a lot easier for you. I guess that's my message for today. Thank you so much for joining me. So Saturday at 1 p.m. and bring your questions. I hope I answered everybody's questions because this doesn't save. So yeah, it looks like I got through them all at the end there. Fantastic. And feel free to email me, samsorbo.com. Also, please tell your friends. I'd love to grow my audience. So thanks so much for tuning in. And that's it for me. Bye-bye.